Hello, and welcome to Introduction to Psychology. In this session, we will continue our look at assessment and intelligence. The session will focus on examining theories of intelligence. The first theory to be examined is psychometric theory. Psychometric theory of intelligence is concerned with the measurement of intelligence. Psychometric theories explain patterns in test performance. For example, how might you explain the pattern of data shown? Why is Tom best overall, and why does William beat Tom at math? You might conclude that Tom performs the best overall because he is just the cleverest, while William beats Tom on math because he has a particular aptitude for numbers. This is the essence of two-factor theory. Some of the earliest research into analytical intelligence was carried out by Charles Spearman. For example, Spearman measured how well school-age children performed on a variety of tasks, such as vocabulary, algebra, general knowledge, short-term memory, perceptual discrimination, and school academic performance. Using a statistical technique called factor analysis, which he invented, Spearman found that most of these measures were positively correlated. That is, children who scored high on one test tended to score high on all other tests. Spearman also found that although the different measures were correlated, they were not perfectly correlated. The child who had the highest score on one measure didn't necessarily have the highest score on every measure. From these two findings, Spearman concluded that intelligence was determined by one underlying factor that he called G, general intelligence, and that any task performance requires both general intelligence and specific abilities known as S. These are the ability to do things unique to that task. For example, performance at algebra would rely mostly on being generally clever, G, but would also be influenced by having the specific ability to work with symbols. Spearman said that G was fixed at birth, whereas S factors could be improved with training. A useful analogy of this is that sporting performance relies on both general athleticism, G, but also on specific abilities, such as running, jumping, and throwing. Now consider these data. What patterns are seen in this person's performance on various tasks over time? How might you explain these patterns? The pattern seen for problem solving and reasoning illustrated is that ability tends to increase early in life, remain constant in midlife, and decrease in old age. The pattern seen for general knowledge and vocabulary in this example is that ability increases with age. This is the essence of GFGC theory. Raymond Cattell noticed a similar pattern in his test data, and from this concluded that there wasn't one type of G, but two types. Fluid general intelligence, GF, is cleverness that relies on information processing, using information provided. For example, reasoning, problem solving, or pattern recognition. Fluid general intelligence peaks in late adolescence. Crystallized general intelligence, GC, is cleverness that relies on acquired knowledge and skills, using information that you have learned. For example, reporting facts, performing skills, and applying strategies. Crystallized general intelligence increases with age. A second theory of intelligence is cognitive theory. Cognitive theories explain the relationship between intelligence and basic mental abilities. For example, if you were presented with a sequence of lines and asked the question, which of these lines is longest, you would need to pay attention to the screen, you would need to remember what you saw, and you would need to be able to compare the information in your mind. This illustrates that performance on tasks relies on mental abilities such as attention, perception, memory, representation, and processing speed. A third theory of intelligence is contextual theory. Contextual theories explain why people perform better in some situations than others. They explain why people can appear intelligent in some situations, but less intelligent in other situations. This can be illustrated by attempting the questions shown. You might notice that you find some of the questions easier to answer than the others. This is because the questions tap into different types of intelligence. Robert Sternberg claims that there are three types of intelligence. Analytical intelligence, which is the ability to judge, evaluate, analyze, compare, and contrast, that is to solve academic problems. Creative intelligence, which is the ability to design, invent, originate, or imagine, that is to generate novel ideas. And practical intelligence, which is the ability to deal with the real world, that is to adapt to circumstances. According to Sternberg, we all have these abilities to different degrees. Hence, you may have found some of the exercise questions easier than the others. But all of the three abilities tend to work together. That is, they can be used in combination. For example, you might use both creative and practical intelligence to come up with the idea of using a sock to replace a broken fan belt if your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere. While Sternberg claims there are three types of intelligence, Howard Gardner claims that there are multiple types of intelligence. These are linguistic intelligence, the ability to use language well; logical mathematical intelligence, the ability to manipulate abstract symbols; spatial intelligence, the ability to think three-dimensionally; naturalistic intelligence, the ability to see patterns in the outdoor environment; musical intelligence, the ability to be sensitive to pitch, tone, melody, and rhythm; bodily kinesthetic intelligence, the ability to monitor the movements of one's body; interpersonal intelligence, the ability to understand other people; and intrapersonal intelligence, the ability to understand oneself. According to Gardner, we all have these intelligence to different degrees, but they tend to work separately. They do not combine with one another. A fourth theory of intelligence is biological theory. Biological theories outline the anatomical factors that determine intelligence. Differences in intelligence appear to be linked to a number of anatomical factors. In general, there seems to be a moderate correlation between the size of a person's brain and their intelligence. That is, the greater a person's brain volume, the higher their intelligence. However, men have significantly larger brains than women, yet there is no difference between the sexes in overall IQ. Thus, intelligence seems to be more due to how the brain is organized rather than its size. The brain consists of both grey matter, neuronal cell bodies, dendrites, and unmyelated axons, and white matter, neuronal myelated axons. Grey matter is important for information processing, while white matter is important for information communication. Both information processing and information sharing play an important role in intelligence. Men have 6.5 times more grey matter than women, women have 10 times more white matter than men. Hence, female intelligence seems to be linked with the ability to integrate information, while male intelligence seems to be linked with the ability to process information. Female thinking tends to be more holistic, taking many things into consideration. It is nuanced. Male thinking tends to be more atomistic, taking only a few things into consideration. It is very matter of fact. There is much support for the frontal parietal integration explanation of intelligence. That is, it is the frontal and parietal regions of the brain that are most closely associated with intelligence. The more dense and the more well-connected these regions are, the more intelligent a person tends to be. There is also much support for the neural efficiency explanation for intelligence. Smart people use less energy to solve problems. Their brains burn less glucose. People with high verbal intelligence retrieve information from memory faster than people with low intelligence. And clever people tend to perceive stimuli more quickly than less clever people. The fifth theory of intelligence is genetic theory. Genetic theory outlines the role of heredity in intelligence. There is no doubt that genes influence intelligence, and researchers have found that genetic markers for intelligence exist on numerous chromosomes. Hence, intelligence is said to be polygenetic. It is influenced by many genes. The question is, how much do genes influence intelligence? This question can only be partially answered. It is impossible to quantify the influence of genes on an individual's IQ. It is impossible to say how much of your intelligence is due to your genes and how much of it is due to the environment in which you are raised. However, it is possible to quantify how much of the variance in a group's IQ is attributable to genes. This is done by calculating heritability. One way of calculating heritability is to perform twin studies. Identical twins have all of their genes in common. Fraternal twins have half of their genes in common. Identical twins tend to be very similar in IQ. Fraternal twins tend to be less similar in IQ. If you assume that twins are raised in the same environment, then any difference in similarity must be attributable to genes. It is estimated that approximately 50% of the difference between individuals' test scores is due to genetics. A sixth theory of intelligence is cultural theory. Cultural theories outline the environmental factors that determine intelligence. There are many such factors. For example, nutrition influences intelligence in many ways. Prenatally, good nutrition is essential for the health of expectant mothers and their developing fetuses. Low nutrition inhibits brain growth in fetuses. It also inhibits brain development in children. Furthermore, low nutrition inhibits a child's ability to concentrate and so reduces their capacity to learn. Enrichment, or stimulation, is also important for intelligence. Enriched environments, those environments that give access to varied ideas, varied information, and lots of experience, seem to promote ability. Environments the world over have become more and more enriched in recent years. People have much more access to books, to computers, and to television. And this has led to something called the Flynn effect. The Flynn effect is illustrated by the fact that scores on IQ tests have increased by about 15 points over the last 50 years. Motivation also influences intelligence. The more motivated people are, the better they tend to do on tests. Motivation can arise from a number of sources. Some families can be more encouraging than others. Some cultures value academic success more than others, and some families expect success more than others. Similarly, some individuals expect to do better than others. Some people believe that hard work pays off, which makes them more conscientious than those people who believe that performance relies on pure talent. Finally, some people become anxious about IQ tests because they are worried that their results will confirm a negative stereotype. For example, a woman might get worried about a spatial awareness test because she doesn't want people to think that women have no sense of direction. She might then perform badly on the test just because she is worried, not because she has no sense of direction. This worry about confirming a negative stereotype is known as stereotype threat. It should be noted that all of these factors, nutrition, environment, and expectation, and motivation, are linked with social economic status. That is, the wealthier your background, the better your nutrition, enrichment, and motivation are likely to be.